Welcome back to the CityUHK Distinguished Lecture, School of Energy and Environment 15th Anniversary Symposium on Global Sustainability and Energy Innovation. May I now pass the stage to Associate Vice President of Strategic Research, Professor Zheng WANG, to be the moderator of the panel discussion. Professor Wang, please.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this important panel discussion on global sustainability with a particular focus on climate change. We're honored to have a distinguished lineup of experts in different areas who will share with us valuable insights, knowledge, and experience to this critical topic. First, we have Ms. Margaret Fong, the Executive Director of the Hong Kong Trade Development Council. Ms. Fong will kick off our discussion with her opening remarks, sharing insights on the role of trade in promoting sustainable practice. Following Ms. Fong's opening remark, we will have the following panelists. Next is Mr. Leong Zheng, Chief Strategy Officer at the Hong Kong Monetary Authority Exchange Fund Investment Office. Then joining us as well, Professor Zheng Kang, a global expert in climate change and sustainable development from the Department of Economics at Korean University. We're also pleased to have Ms. Nova Lee, a special advisor to the Director General of the Global Green Growth Institute, where His Excellency Ban Ki-moon currently serves as the President of the Assembly and the Chair of the Council. Lastly, we will have our own Professor Virginia Harper Ho from School of Law, who specializes in corporate law, governance, securities regulation, sustainability, and corporate finance. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Margaret Fong to deliver her opening remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a great pleasure to take part in today's symposium. You may be thinking, what does Hong Kong Trade Development Council has to do with global sustainability? So here I am trying to share a few thoughts with you on how we look at global sustainability from the perspective of trade and investment. Hong Kong has excellent credentials on sustainability. Just a few months ago, we published the results of a sustainability survey we did jointly with the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. The survey respondents overwhelmingly filled Hong Kong as a vital facilitator for sustainable development across the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area due to our capability in green business practices and financial services. The records we set in Asia in green bond issuance speak for themselves. We account for 1/3 of the total bond issuance in the region. The Hong Kong Trade Development Council has a network of 50 offices globally, and we are very active in promoting Hong Kong's strengths in sustainability by incorporating these themes in our 40 international trade fairs and conferences and the many support programs and overseas promotions that we carry out throughout the year. Just as an example, in October, we host our anchor sustainability event, Eco Expo Asia, a large-scale showcase of the latest products and services related to environmental protection and carbon reduction. This year, we are very happy to have attracted over 300 exhibitors and, more importantly, buyers and participants from 94 countries and regions. What we do is, in addition to the business matching, we held roundtable meetings to get together the policymakers from mainland China, Hong Kong, and ASEAN to match them with the solution providers from around the world so that they are able to address the practical issues that they face. In addition to the Green Agenda's thought leadership at our flagship events, such as the Belt and Road Summit and Asian Financial Forum, HKTDC events also played a role in the deal-making of sustainability projects. We helped, for instance, a Hong Kong venture capital firm entered into collaboration with a state-owned enterprise in Indonesia to develop smart chicken farms in Indonesia's new capital city. This will be very important for the many civil servants who will soon be relocating there, providing them with a very sustainable food supply. The farms themselves will be powered by renewable energy to reduce their carbon footprint. At the same time, we have also introduced the parties to consult with CityU's vet school about poultry vaccines, which could be of tremendous help to increase productivity for the more traditional farms in this part of Indonesia, showing how organizations in Hong Kong are truly working together to realize sustainable projects and make an impact for the people involved. In another case, which is, of course, from City University, we helped a Filipino property developer to sign an order to purchase I2Cool heat-reducing paint, and they are now being used in public housing and other housing across all of Philippines, bringing relief to the community and also contributing to sustainability. Earlier this year, we also helped a high-performance solar battery technology company in Jiangsu to conclude a green loan package with a Hong Kong bank worth over 500 million yuan. With the loan in hand, the company went on to set up facilities in Cambodia and Laos, which products will help the global transition from carbon-based fuel. These are just some of the examples of the many deals which were facilitated by HKTDC. What we are hoping to do is to bring all the players around the world, those with demand, those with the solutions, and those with financing, to come together to contribute to sustainability. And in the process, we will be able to fully showcase the Hong Kong ecosystem playing an active role from energy efficiency and renewable energy to green buildings and supply chains. Another important area we hope to contribute to is to help our Hong Kong small and medium-sized enterprises to embrace environmental, social, and governance principles. And we offer help to them as part of our T-Box program. This business support program provides free customized support for SMEs to help them address the challenges they face in enhancing their ESG competitiveness, as well as providing them with the latest market intelligence, best practices, and requirements of major export markets. For us at the HKTDC, it is all about facilitating collaboration, connection, and creating a global ecosystem to push the green agenda, which continues to grow and thrive as a result of the collaborations we facilitate. With the help of our partners, such as yourselves, we can bring together like-minded industry players who are keen to affect change and deepen the awareness of sustainability as a business proposition. I invite every one of you here today to work with us and through our events to create a brighter and greener future for all. Thank you.
Now let's invite our panelists to be seated to take the stage and present their sharing with us. So first, Mr. Leong Chong from HKMA and Professor Sang-Jin Kang from Korean University, Ms. Nova Lee from GGGI, and our own Professor Virginia Harper Ho. So we're delighted to have these 4 experts to share either their research or the achievements of their organization with us. So maybe we start with Mr. Liang Chuang.
Right. Thank you. So I think, again, sustainability is obviously a very big issue of our time. So why sort of finance, what's the role of finance in the whole scheme of things? So to me, I think you always look at sort of government regulations as the flooring, as I say it. So you look at different trends of that government regulations, they seems to be coming up. Certain countries may be going back, we don't know yet, let's not speculate. But generally, you see different governments having their regulations shoring up everywhere. So I think with that, what business and how business should be reacting to it is a big question. So as you see, some businesses, whenever there is regulations, they wait until the last one to comply. So you see those. But a lot more businesses, the more progressive ones, and perhaps more so the winners at the end, if you will, they actually don't just look at the regulation flooring. They look at, or they set themselves an aspiration ceiling. So that's where they want the competitiveness to come from. I think sustainability has come through a long long journey, whereby today, if you look at solar, if you look at some of the renewable energy, they have actually become more than just sort of a hype or a dream. Their cost has come down. The economics becomes very, very viable when compared to other type of fields. So investors are looking at these opportunities, not just to say, oh, I'm a good guy, out of my investments, I've done something in it. But a lot of investors now looking at it and say there are 2 angles we can actually invest, both from banking credit side and also from equity side, investment side. So one is risk, right? So to say, well, yep, this company, today maybe it's okay, but if you look at the various types of climate risk and regulation risk, if those companies are better prepared than some others, maybe they're of more investment value than the other companies who lag behind. So I think that's one angle. Now, the other angle is really to say, hey, there are actually opportunities in there, right? So we all know AI is becoming a huge investment theme, dominating. Now, to power AI, you need a lot of data centers. And a lot of data centers require a lot of powers. So you see, in fact, in the last couple of months, a major US technology company, they buy up nuclear power supply for the next 15, 20 years. This is a $1.5 billion deal, if I remember correctly. So these sort of things, in fact, from an investment perspective, they make a lot of investment sense as well. So the HKMA, if I may come back just a couple of minutes, we are the reserve manager for Hong Kong. So we manage the Hong Kong's reserve. We're also central bank in Hong Kong. We just announced a sustainable finance action agenda about a couple of months ago. So in that agenda, there are 8 broad goals. A couple of them are related to the banking regulation. So taxonomies, how we support banks to then support the companies, businesses who are more progressive along those lines. So it requires a common sense or common standard kind of taxonomy so that the industry can build on. When it comes to investment side, we also deploy a fairly pragmatic way of looking at investments. So to say, it's not that you look at green and you jump in, or that you look at green and you run away. It's still very hardcore, very traditional kind of investment disciplines. You look at sustainable or ESG type of investment, you still need to go into the detail and, like I said, evaluate the risk, look at the potential opportunities, look at why some of those companies, they probably worth, or the potential of growing up their value is a lot more higher than some other companies. So in a way, we have been doing this for a long time. Our first investment into green infrastructure, green bonds, actually started back 2013. In Hong Kong, as a central bank, we're one of the very few central banks globally to have committed to a 2050 carbon net zero target for investment portfolios, right? Not just for the organization. And also, so far, by now, we have actually, if you take 2017 as a base, in our public equity investment, our weighted average carbon intensity has come down by 46% already. And overall, we have about 10% of our overall investment portfolio is already in sustainable investment. So 10% is actually a lot as a global standard. So I think to us, if I may finish here, going forward, there are really two big goals. One is, like I said, we want to come to the 2050 carbon net zero in our portfolio. And two is really to support Asian transition, because again, for the world to transition to net zero, you can't do it without Asia. And for Asian transition, especially when we talk about just transition, a lot of capitals will be required. So how do we do it in a smart way, in a profitable way as well? I think it's continue to be a topic. We're not saying all rosy. There are still a lot of challenges: data availability, standards, reporting. All that will be continue to be some of the challenges. But we do believe, the investable universe are getting bigger and bigger, and a lot more data and transparency are going into the industry. So we hope, with challenges, but there's also a lot more collaborations and willingness to solve this issue as well. And thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Zheng, for your sharing of the experience in sustainable investment. I'm so glad to learn that HKMA is leading the other central banks on this mission. So next, please allow me to invite Ms. Nova Lee to share the achievements of GGGI.
Sure. Indeed, I have a quick presentation, as I feel that pictures probably worth 1,000 words. I want everybody here in this room to just imagine we are now at the peak of the summer, and the sun blazes mercilessly, and you're dripping with sweat. When you want to reach to the tap, no water for days, no showers for months. It sounds like in a dystopian movie, doesn't it? But look at this picture. We are probably too young to remember. In fact, this is the reality of Hong Kong in 1963. At that time, Hong Kong experienced the historic drought in recorded history. It impacts 3.5 million people suffer, and only water available for 4 hours every 4 days. And for the 9 months in a row, there's a single rain drop. This sounds like a relic of history, but not. The climate change actually happening every day in our life. But we all know, luckily, the whole mega water transfer system safe in the 60s, they come to the rescue. And Dongjiang River actually as the source to supply nowadays 70 to 80% of Hong Kong's tap water today. But do you know where is the exact source of Dongjiang River? In fact, it is Heyuan, a very tiny small city in the northeast part of Guangdong province, where it is my hometown. So when I growing up in Heyuan, this small city, it's full of lush forests and flowing rivers. With abundance of water, I took it always for granted. I always felt that even when the elderly was telling me waters and mountains are treasures, but for me, I never believed them. Because after all, Heyuan is a place full of poverty. We are still struggling every day, and even for my parents, they will lay off workers due to the close down of factories in the city. And Heyuan was fighting even for the extreme poverty until 2021. But afterwards, when I work on more global environmental issues, gradually, I see a much bigger picture. Because I know that a city like Heyuan, they made a very bold choice. Instead of expanding industrialization, it chose to actually protect the environment. And of course, have to sacrifice some short-term economic benefits. But the choice was right, because a city's choice of environmental protection actually can benefit millions. As you can see, the Dongjiang River actually sustained over 40 million populations across 6 cities. and it has been benefiting along the very prosperous Great Bay Area. And thanks to charities such as Hong Kong Jockey Club, they have planted, which Leon used to work there, they have these massive afforestation projects actually help to make the quality of water much better, make the supply of water much better to Hong Kong, but also to help to improve the livelihoods in Heyuan, but also the region to combat global climate change. And it really bears fruit for the longer term benefits. As you can see these wonderful pictures of Heyuan, it became a model of environment, sustainability, and development. But just imagine if Heyuan, as a city, to choose a completely different path, a path solely relying on industrialization, expansion, and maybe rare minerals exploitation, because there are many. So what would happen? It would probably like the tragedy of the Aral Sea, as you can see from these satellite images. The once fourth largest lakes in the world started diminishing almost to zero from the 1960s. And that's exactly the time when the drought, severe drought, happened in Hong Kong. And what our president and chair call it one of the most disasters in human history of environment issues. And even all the countries involved pooling every year 1% of their GDP has no result. And environmental degradation, soil storms, desertification, as you can see from the pictures. So what we do, as also this morning our President Pan Ki-moon has mentioned, GGGI as an international organization, we have been supporting our member governments to achieve the green growth qualities and agenda, but also from helping them to design and develop some of the national programs, but also most importantly, to attract and leverage resource, green finance to the region. Every dollars that we use to our project development can leverage over $20. And also, such as what Leon was saying, that in fact green investment is very critical in the world of climate change. So we support the Aral Sea farmers to use the water-saving technology, such as the drip irrigation, providing trainings to them, and also building windbreaks to help to combat desertification. Most importantly, we support the farmers to access to finance through helping them to develop business plans and working with our partner banks and local partners to help and structure and issue the green bonds over $800 million to help the farmers to sustainable practices and to make sure that the Aral Sea region all benefit from this finance facility. As we all know, water connects us all. Water, in fact, has no boundaries. No matter from the forest from Heyuan or to the fields in the Aral Sea, we all connected. And there's an old Chinese saying that 饮水思源,饮水思源, which means that we need to always remember the spring when we are drinking water. So I hope every time when you open your tap of water, please remember to protect the environment. And drought is only one small tiny part of climate change. We have much more to say for our planet. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nova, for presenting the facts and data to us. It's very important for us to learn from history, to learn from data. So I guess first, right? So next, let me invite Professor Kang to give his sharing.
Okay, thank you. My name is Zheng Kang. My major is in economics, especially in economic growth. But recently, I'm working with the Graduate School of Energy and Environment and Urban Regeneration Department. First of all, I would like to introduce the Sustainable Development Goals, the the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon mentioned earlier this morning, why we have a 17 target all together. Because we're going to achieve those targets simultaneously rather than separately. It's really easy to achieve these targets separately. Let's take a look at the climate change issues, climate actions, and the clean energy issues. It's really, maybe it's quite easier to achieve this target separately through the technological innovation. But most of the countries, and including our team, want to continue the economic growth by increasing our well-being. So that is the problem, is how to combine these things, how to achieve these two targets, environmental sustainability and economic growth simultaneously. That is the topic I want to discuss today. Here, for the Korea case, we have a target, the greenhouse gas reduction target by 2030 to reduce about 40% compared to the values in 2018. So from economics point of view and also some environmental the specialist point of view, we are worrying how to achieve this target. And after 2030, there's kind of linear projection to achieve the carbon neutrality in 2050. So from the economics point of view, it's really, really difficult, or maybe impossible to achieve that target by 2030. Anyway, our government very aggressively announced this target in the global, in the world meeting, but we cannot go reverse the way to further this target. So okay, let's see this target, we're going to achieve this target by 2030 and 2050. Then here, that is the overview of my research, recent research on economic issues. As you know, Korea's rapid economic growth is from mainly huge investment on manufacturing sector, or further mainly on heavy chemical sectors. So from this one, let's see we're going to divide all industry into light industry and the heavy chemical industries. From the left one, you can see these are the economic growth patterns in Korea. From the mid-1980s, the share of value added of heavy chemical industries became higher than share of light industries. And also from export-import side, almost out of total manufacturing export and import, almost 90% of that manufacturing sectors are imported or exported. That means Korea's the rapid economic growth depend heavily on manufacturing sector or further on heavy chemical sectors. So as I mentioned earlier, how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by keeping those sectors as main growth engines in the future. Because and then let's further, then we can divide the heavy chemical industries in the general heavy chemical industry and how to say this, the decaying industries or stranded industries. Decaying industries, okay, we're gonna, those industries will be disappeared. For example, the coal sectors and mining sectors, because they are not the less competitive. But for the stranded industries, those industries are defined as industries with huge greenhouse gas emissions, but we should continue those industries because for our export, for our rapid economic growth. But we need those industries to keep our well-being and economic growth. So we're going to divide the heavy chemical industry into general heavy chemical industries and stranded industries. Then you can see the trend over there on. For our paper, we defined the stranded industries such as petrochemical, automobile, petroleum refining, plastics, cement, steel, and shipment. They are totally main growth engines of Korea. Then let's see this way. Then for the value-added case, the share of those stranded industries about 7.66% in 2020. And then export-import, you can see the export case, 46.65% in 2023, 26.7.1% and import. And the next, for the labor share of those industries is almost 4.25%. Then let's see the greenhouse gas emissions of those industries is about 40%. So how to keep those industries by reducing greenhouse gas emissions? But as I mentioned in the beginning, if we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions only, that is really easy. For example, the POSCO. The share of greenhouse gas emissions by POSCO is about 12% in Korea. If we shut down the POSCO, that is easy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions directly by 12%, and then further by reducing the related industries and factories. So 30% reduction right now can be done by shutting down the POSCOs. But nobody wants that one, right? How to continue the POSCO steels by keeping the economic growth as well as reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That is the issues we're going to put the first one. Let's introduce the just transition. Everybody knows about that. We have only 5 minutes, so I will give you a very brief overview of that. That was initiated in the 1970s for the shutdown of coal plant. So if you shut down the coal plant or some traditional energy intensive factories, then we face 2 problems: unemployment or further labor reallocation, and also depression in regional economies. How to reduce, how to promote those sectors, those industries, even after those sectors were shut down. So that is the first one, just the environment. Then we have 2. If we see if the environmental specialists and economists sit together, we have some kind of conflict on those policies: direct intervention by the government or the incentive intervention by the market. So economists prefer the incentive mechanism rather than direct regulation. So we have 2 issues. For the then for the labor market case, we have 2 things: the active labor market, direct intervention. Second one is passive labor market, is social welfare policies by supporting the unemployed people. So in economist point of view, we prefer this kind of active labor market policies, labor reallocation, education, and retraining to reallocate those unemployed laborers into the other sectors, rather than giving direct support, for example, unemployment insurance or social welfare issues. Let me skip that one. And this one is also, we call the regional regeneration or rehabilitation. The Germany is doing very well those things. Let's shut down the coal power plant. How to regenerate or rehabilitate those areas by establishing specific or new energy or renewable energy sectors or new growth engine sectors. So that is the one of the hot issues in Germany case. They made different kind of the hydrogen industrial complex by shutdowning a coal power plant. That is also. Then finally, that is more stressful for developing countries. Recently, we are arguing about the tariff issues. Not Trump's tariff, but there is kind of the tariff by CBAM or border, CBAM by EU or border tax by the US. That is more stressful for developing countries than Trump's tariff increase. So in economics, we are arguing that kind of tariff increase is green protectionism or legitimate measures. But from the developed countries' point of view, they are not saying that, no, this is not protectionism. This is kind of the policies to attack against climate change. So that should be justified by all developed or developing countries. So in that case, we needed to see, or we needed to look at the green industries. What is green industries? That means green industries means a growth engine as well as with they have very lower greenhouse gas emissions. We should make new growth engines or growth engines by introducing this kind of new green industries, including renewable energy or by considering the climate finance or green finance, we should promote those industries. So that is how to define green industries. That is quite sensitive, depending on the authors and institutions. They have different definitions of the green product or non-green product. But that is my one of research topics. Okay, we have only 5 minutes. I just speed up the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kang, for your enlightening sharing. Yeah, it's a dilemma whether how we trade off economic growth with green growth, right? The monetary growth with green growth. Okay, so last but not least, our own Professor Ho.
Thank you, all of you, and thanks to the School of Energy and Environment and also to Professor Wang for organizing and moderating here today. You've all been a very gracious audience, and I'm the last in a long line of distinguished speakers, so I'm going to try to keep my comments short. But as Professor Wang mentioned, my research is at the intersection of sustainable finance and corporate governance, and we've heard a bit today already about the critical role of the banking sector and financial regulation in climate responses and adaptation. And certainly Hong Kong is well positioned at the center of all of that. We know that investors, corporate boards in the private sector are critical to the post-carbon transition and indeed to a green finance transition. And so I'd like to focus a little bit on these aspects today. So one development in climate finance that many of you may be aware of already is the massive shift that is happening in the past couple of years and indeed right now toward mandatory climate risk disclosure by listed companies and other large companies across many of the world's capital markets. As of this year, 2024, more than 20 capital markets have adopted the International Sustainability Standards Board reporting standards for climate and/or sustainability, and that represents about 50% of global GDP. It also represents more than 50% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. So that's significant, and for those of us here in Hong Kong, many of you may know that our listed companies will be required to report as of next year against the same standards. So that's very exciting. However, in the literature on the effects of disclosure as a regulatory tool, we already know that there is great potential, but also some key limits to these kind of approaches. So obviously, getting good data on climate risk to the capital markets, to investors, is critical. We also know that being required to mandatorily report against a clear and comparable standard can also drive corporate behavior. And so there is a kind of lever there that disclosure regulation can bring about. And so this is very useful in Hong Kong's goals and global goals toward net zero. We might get more information on and more reliable information on what companies are actually doing to set and perhaps achieve net zero targets of their own. But there are some limitations. There are clear limitations to relying exclusively on disclosure-based models to drive corporate behavior and change the way companies do business. So we clearly continue to need governments as regulators to set a level playing field for companies and to create many of the incentives that we were just discussing. Data by itself also does not drive investment or capital allocation. It is a critical first step, but it literally is a first step. And we are only at the beginning of having good data on which investors can base their investment decisions. But we need investors and we need companies themselves to see not only the climate risk, but also the opportunities that investment brings. And Mr. Cheung mentioned some of those already. But we also need this to happen quickly. And again, this is where regulation might play an important role. But with regard to the role of the private sector generally in helping us achieve the sustainability development goals, I think there's several key points to bear in mind. I'll be very brief. Some of these we've heard about already. In fact, Professor Song mentioned one of them I'd just like to emphasize. The first is the interrelationship of the SDGs. So if we're just talking about climate risk and we're looking at the climate transition, companies, reporting standard setters, governments already know that tackling climate risk cannot be achieved apart from protecting the environment, looking at responsible consumption and production, talking about a just transition for workforces, as we've just heard. So the corporate sector already and standard setters already are pushing ahead beyond climate risk reporting, for example, to look at nature-related financial risks to companies and to economies. Biodiversity risk, for example. Investors are very concerned about biodiversity risk because, again, all of these things are interrelated. But this points us to a more fundamental question that is relevant in my field, where there's been this misperception that corporate law and securities regulation even are completely unrelated or disconnected from more public law concepts like employment protection or income generation and growth and those matters, and also environmental protection as kind of a public, kind of a government regulation matter. But again, these are all very related. And so the second point is that there is kind of a fundamental tension that we are encountering, not only between economic growth and climate action, but at the corporate level, between profit and climate responses. And so there are some very difficult challenges and trade-offs with the kind of investment that companies need to make to adapt, to be resilient, and even to comply with some of the new regulations. But also kind of the traditional ways of doing business might need to change. And so that's a reality that I think companies need to grapple with. So what are some of the solutions? Some of the solutions are to harness competition and markets in the right direction. Again, data is a big part of that. We need government, again, to set a level playing field and to create smart regulation. But in terms of competition among companies themselves toward the Sustainable Development Goals, one of the really interesting things, I think, in the area of reporting and disclosure that we've seen recently is not only the work of some of the United Nations agencies, but also independent cross-sectoral work, particularly the work of the World Benchmarking Alliance, which is creating benchmarks, creating standards, and creating what we call league tables. Some of us that come from the world of finance might think about league tables for law firms or finance firms or even investment funds. Who are the leaders in a sector? But what if we had really reliable benchmarks and league tables across industries so that industries, companies can start to compete with their peers about success and attainment of some of these development goals and the transformation of industry. So that's something that we're starting to see happen. I think it's really exciting. But I'd like to return and conclude by just highlighting something that former Secretary General Bond said today that I think was really inspiring in this current time of tension and deglobalization and all of that. But he talked about the need for coordination and partnership. And I think one area that is really deserving of promising research going forward here at CityU and elsewhere is the need for research on how better can the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector collaborate to be more aligned towards some of the goals that we've been talking about today. So I look forward to being part of that effort, and thank you again to all of those on the panel that joined me here today.
Thank you very much, Virginia, for sharing your insights. Since we are standing between you and the lunch, and we are severely behind schedule now, we're not taking any question from the audience. Yeah, and thank you so much for attending this panel discussion.
Thank you, Professor Wang, for chairing the panel discussion. And thank you, everyone. It's now the lunch break. The afternoon session of the School of Energy and Environment Symposium will commence at 2 p.m. in the Senate Room on the 19th floor of Lau Ming Wai Academic Building. Please enjoy your meal and see you in the afternoon.